There's an old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This talk, entitled Fiber the Full Story, is about fiber's role in supporting the preventative immune system. The Seventh-day Adventists are famous for encouraging a plant-based diet because of the fiber that plants have. Animal foods, meat, dairy, have no fiber. Having fiber in one's diet has led Seventh-day Adventists living in Loma Linda, California, to hold the title of being the only blue zone in the United States. As a group, Seventh-day Adventists living in Loma Linda, California, have 10 times more people living to over 100 years of age than elsewhere throughout the nation. This longevity researchers attribute to the 8 laws of health that they follow. One law, nutrition, is their use of plants only in their diet, plants that are high in fiber. Many explanations as to what fiber is doing to increase longevity, various people have offered over the 100 years that this diet has been encouraged. One, however, does not need to know how something works to have success when doing it. One needs only to eat that way. The recent discovery that our bodies have vast colonies of microbes living in and on us, whose exudates are indispensable for our health, led to the discovery of the role of fiber. God always has something new to teach us. Our education throughout eternity will have no end to new discoveries as we study God's creation and design of our bodies. The Human Genome Project, involving the identifying, mapping, and sequencing of our genes that tell our cells how to operate. The project also discovered that 99% of the genes that run or operate us belong to many different microbes. These microbe colonies' exudates are necessary nutrients for the healthy operation of our bodies. 90% of the cells in us and on us are not human. They belong to the microbe colonies that operate to feed us nutrients to keep us healthy. We'll be looking at one area in our body, the large intestines colonies of microbes. Our examination of these colonies of microbes will focus on what they do to keep us healthy. It is in the large intestine that fiber carries out its role in our health. Before we examine the large intestine's colonies of microbes, let us first take a brief look at microbe colonies in general. Microbe colonies have many roles in many different areas of the body. Some are microbes that cover the eye and assist in its healthy operation. Others in the mouth, throat, stomach, and small intestine assist digestion of food to sugar fuel for the cells. These colonies may have hundreds to thousands of species of microbes, all of them performing many different operations. Microbe colonies comprise beneficial or good bacteria, virus, fungi, yeast, and other creatures, all of them performing roles of service for our health. When the colonies of microbes are poisoned or fed foods that God never intended us to eat, they change to germs or bad bacteria, bad viruses, bad fungi, bad yeast that hurt us. In these colonies, God epigenetically designed microbe species to change from good guys to bad guys depending on our lifestyle choices. These lifestyle choices are the environmental influences that God designed to turn on and off epigenetic switches on genes. Examples of lifestyle choices that turn on and off epigenetic switches on genes are as follows. The air we breathe, polluted or clean. The rest we get or do not get. Exercise we get or do not get. Peace of heaven we get as we take our problems to God, or turmoil and upsetness we keep when we worry. Pure water we drink or do not drink. Toxins we avoid or do not avoid. Sunshine we get or do not get. And nutrition, what we eat or do not eat. God gave us dominion over our genes and microbe genes environment. Any environmental changes, God designed our genes to track. Further, he designed our genes to alter their operations according to what we did to the environment of the paradise home he gave us to maintain. Now let us look at the microbe colonies in the large intestine. God designed them to take complex molecules of fiber and convert them to a light oil fuel. In contrast, the microbe colonies in the mouth, stomach, and small intestine convert less complex molecules of starches and less complex molecules of sugars to sugar fuel. 85% of the body's cells burn sugar or glucose fuel. 15% of the body's cells burn a light oil fuel, butyric acid. This difference is as a vehicle designed to burn gasoline versus a vehicle designed to burn diesel. Each cell or vehicle must have the fuel that is designed to burn in order for it to operate properly. The breakdown or digestion of the foods we eat are first processed to sugar in the mouth, then the stomach, and finally in the small intestine. The insoluble fiber, a term used to describe what remains, in other words, not digested to sugar, goes into the large intestine. Of this fiber, the large intestine can further digest some kinds, while other kinds of fiber it cannot and passes out. Cows and grazers can digest insoluble cellulose fiber and make fuel from it. We cannot. Termites can digest insoluble wood fiber and make fuel from it. We cannot. However, God designed us to digest starches and complex sugars which resisted digestion in the small intestine to a light oil fuel. Now, here's the importance of that fiber. Fiber that the microbes digest in the large intestine to a light oil fuel is the fuel necessary for our immune cells. These cells line our airways and digestive tract. When these cells do not get the fuel they need, that compromises our immunity. The standard American diet only has 1/10 of the fiber needed for the compost operation in the large intestine, which makes oil fuel for the immune cells. The standard American diet starves our immune cells, and we become immune compromised. Starved and sickly immune cells cannot perform their role of keeping undigested food, toxins, and bad microbes out of the bloodstream. As a result, this filter system leaks. Sick immune cells allow undigested food like proteins instead of amino acids to enter the bloodstream. These proteins cause allergic reactions like gluten intolerance or nut allergies. Sick immune cells allow toxins from air pollution or industrial agricultural chemicals on our food also to enter the bloodstream. They allow tiny microbes like viruses and even larger bacteria to enter and contaminate the bloodstream. Starvation of immune cells causes a leaky gut because of the shortage of the fuel they need to be healthy. The remedy is fiber in the diet and a healthy large intestine microbiome. In the large intestine microbiome, there are vast colonies from over 50,000 species of microbes, depending on how you measure species, that operate symbiotically. Each species works together to assist our body's operations. A poor diet of highly processed foods and animal products, foods with little or no fiber, does not provide the large intestine microbiome the compost material it needs to make the nutrients we need to be healthy. To have friendly colonies of microbes in our large intestine requires a diet of fiber for them to feed on and a healthy habitat for them to live in. Antibiotics kill off these colonies. Antibiotics are not just what the doctor prescribed. There are far more antibiotics used in agriculture than prescribed for animals or people combined. Consider Roundup, which when first registered was as an antibiotic. However, its dual role as an herbicide has wreaked havoc to our gut microbiome. Antibiotics kill microbes. Crops have been genetically modified to take very large doses of Roundup or glyphosate. Glyphosate is a chemical name of Roundup. Manufacturing or other companies, however, may use other names for herbicides or antibiotics, hiding it from detection. The genetic modification of crops so that they can sustain heavy dosings of glyphosate and not die has 95% of the American public excreting Roundup daily in their urine. In the last few years, a terrible practice has developed where crops are quick killed with Roundup to dry down fast for harvest. Growers put a fresh coat of this antibiotic, which kills microbes in our gut, on grains, beans, seeds, and nuts. 85% of the almond crop in the United States, growers spray with Roundup at harvest. The last I heard, there were over 25 crops sprayed at harvest. Killing off the microbes in the large intestine with foods laced with this poison must stop to have good health. Eat organic foods. By law, they're not supposed to contain Roundup. Better yet, why depend on the integrity of an organic grower? Grow your own food. Fiber that feeds the human microbiome in the large intestine so that it can compost to immune cell fuel is starch, which the small intestine microbiome could not digest to glucose. Fiber is also complex molecules of sugar that could not digest in the small intestine to glucose. Fiber does not comprise cellulose, woody fiber, and other fibers that the microbes in the large intestine cannot digest. The term fiber, as we're using it, means only the material that the microbes in our large intestine can compost to immune cell fuel. Now, these are sources of the undigested starches. There are different sources of undigested starches that microbes have to compost in the large intestine that include, but are not limited to, the following. Starch covered with skin or bran. God designed grain and bean seeds with a covering over the starch. The covering of bran can prevent some of the starch from digesting to sugar. In other words, some of the starch from beans and grains covered by their skin prevents digestion until reaching the large intestine where the microbes compost it to immune cell fuel. Modern milling has devised ways to remove bran from grains. When removed from rice, it produces polished rice. When removed from barley, it produces pearled barley, although barley has so much bran on it that even the pearled barley has a lot of fiber. When removed from wheat or rye, it yields white wheat flour or white rye flour, from where we get white wheat bread or white rye bread. As a result, these milled grains, polished rice, pearled barley, white wheat flour, white rye flour, as well as any flour finely ground, like pastry flour, leave less starch for the large intestine microbes to compost. Even whole grains, finely ground, leave little fiber. On the other hand, coarsely ground grains like bulgur wheat have the most fiber, and they provide starch for the large intestine's microbes to digest to immune cell fuel. Ellen White terms this type of bran-covered starch as unbolted flour. Usually, we cook beans with their skin, which provides starch for the large intestine microbes to digest to immune cell fuel. However, when finely ground to flour, the skin of beans, lentils, or other legume seeds does not prevent some of the starch from digesting. As a result, it leaves almost none for the microbes in the large intestine to compost. By processing to fine flour, we render beans, a high-fiber food, useless as a fiber source. Starch in the chloroplast of leafy green plants. This starch is too complex a molecule for the small intestine to digest. Starch is in some roots and tubers. Some roots and tubers, when cooled after cooking, recrystallize some of their starch. This cannot be digested except in the large intestine, where microbes compost it to a light oil fuel. Potato salad or sweet potato pudding have more fiber than potatoes and sweet potatoes right out of the oven. Sources of complex sugars. As stated previously, complex sugars are fiber. They cannot digest in the small intestine to glucose. Instead, microbes in the large intestine compost them to oil fuel. These complex sugars include Gels. Foods where you find gels are tomatoes, aloe vera, etc. Most people are familiar with the pointed and fleshy green leaves of the aloe vera plant, which contain a slimy tissue that stores water, making the leaves thick. This water-filled tissue is the gel, whereas the gel in tomatoes is that jelly-like substance that surrounds a tomato seed. Each tomato seed has a gel sac around it. Mucilage. Foods where you find mucilage are foods that are mucilaginous, and they include flaxseed, okra, chia seeds, slippery elm bark, etc. You might not know what mucilage is just by the name. Most likely, however, you have seen it in action. For example, when you add liquid to chia seeds, it swells up and becomes gelatinous, or okra cooked in water becomes gooey. That's the soluble fiber called mucilage contained in the chia seeds or okra. Slimy foods such as seaweed. Seaweed can be categorized into green algae, brown algae, and red algae. The most commonly eaten seaweeds are brown algae that include kelp, kombu, and wakame. And green algae includes spirulina, chlorella, and limu, found in Hawaii and other Pacific islands, also sold in Costco as Kirkland's organic seaweed. Red algae include dulse and nori. Gums. Food gums naturally derive from the following. Peach gum from the sap of peach trees, which naturally hardens into a gummy crystalline form on the tree bark. Many of us love the juicy, delicious fruit. However, we probably did not realize that the peaches themselves contain gum. Besides peaches, fruits from other prunus trees also have gum, such as plums, cherries, and apricots. Undoubtedly, most of us never thought about eating gum from peach trees, but in fact, you can. Yes, peach sap is edible. The Chinese use it for both medicinal and culinary purposes. Prior to eating gum from the peach trees, it must be soaked overnight or up to 18 hours, slowly brought to a boil and cooked down, then cooled, and any impurities, such as dirt or bark, are picked from it. Peach gum is commonly used in Chinese sweets, but it may also be used to nourish the body as an emollient to rejuvenate the skin. Claims include that it creates firmer skin with less wrinkles, cleanses the blood, builds up the immune system, removes cholesterol, and balances the body's pH. Guara gum derived from a type of legume called guara or cluster bean. Guara gum is very versatile. You can use guara gum for thickening cold and hot liquids. You can add it to hot and cold dishes while still maintaining its thickening properties. Add it to recipes like salad dressings or your favorite smoothie to perfect the consistency. Guara gum is a good source of fiber with 80% soluble fiber, dietary fiber on a dry weight basis. Resins. A resin is a sticky sap that exudes when a tree suffers a cut or injury. Resin acts like a bandage to cover the tree's wound and to protect the tree from insects, parasites, and other pathogens. Think of a pine tree that has a missing tree limb. What do you see? Sticky sap flows from the tree, essentially making a bandage over the wound that hardens and eventually fossilizes into an incredibly hard substance called amber. The primary difference between gums and resins is that resins are not water-soluble, while gums are. In other words, resins do not dissolve in water. They harden when exposed to air and melt when exposed to heat. Some people herald resins for its antibacterial and antifungal properties. Thus, some resins may have medicinal or antiseptic properties when used appropriately. Thickeners. Many foods used as thickeners thicken because of the complex sugars in them. These complex sugars are often incorrectly called starch. Examples are arrowroot powder or arrowroot starch. It's derived from the canna plant, Canna edulis. That root can be eaten like potato. Arrowroot powder is colorless and flavorless. Potato starch is extracted from potatoes. It has a low gelatinizing temperature, relatively colorless, odorless, and tasteless, and a strong binding texture. Most of the starch in potato is digested to sugar, but there is a portion of it that is not. That is inaccurately called potato starch. Tapioca starch, extracted from the cassava plant, is a very fine white powder that gels and is a great thickening agent for food. Slightly sweet tapioca starch sometimes substitutes for cornstarch, potato starch, and even wheat flour in gluten-free baking. Fruits. Some fruits like persimmons and avocados are very high in complex sugars. The pectin on apples and pear skins is a complex sugar. Olives are also high in fiber. Some roots like chicory and yacon are used to make complex sugar. For example, inulin sugar that diabetics can use because it requires no inulin to digest it. Other roots include sweet potato, cassava, taro, dasheen, yam, cocoa, edo, tania, yautia, and so forth. Seeds and nuts. Some seeds and nuts are among the most lignin-rich foods. Lignin fiber, and don't confuse that with lignin, which is woody fiber. This is lignan fiber, is one of the complex sugars found in seeds and nuts. Dietary intake of lignan fiber foods is another way to bolster the prevention of chronic diseases, such as certain types of cancers and cardiovascular diseases. Chief sources of dietary lignans are various vegetables and fruits, legumes, whole grain cereals, and oil seeds. The most concentrated lignan sources are sesame and flax seeds. Cashew seeds are also relatively rich in lignans. Regarding cereal grains, lignans are largely concentrated in their outer layers. The fiber-rich outer layer has the highest lignan concentration. Lignan, therefore, in seeds, nuts, and other foods is fiber that the microbes compost in the large intestine. These are food sources of fiber. Following is an incomplete list of foods that contain fiber. For nuts, we have walnuts, almonds, pistachios, pecan, coconut, macadamia, hickory, Brazil, hazelnut, chestnut, pine, etc. For seeds, we have flax, hemp, chia, psyllium, sesame, sunflower, pumpkin, squash, watermelon, melons, etc. For fruits, we have blueberries, raspberries of all kinds, blackberries, strawberries, cherries, peaches, plums, apricots, nectarines, figs, dates, pears, kiwis, apples, pomegranates, citrus fruits, tropical fruits such as mango, guava, banana, jackfruit, passion fruit, pineapple, papaya, dragon fruit, and breadfruit, etc. Green leafy vegetables and herbs. We have kale, lettuce, cilantro, spinach, collards, arugula, etc. And all edible wild leafy greens such as dandelion greens, lamb's quarters, and violet leaves. Flower heads such as broccoli, cauliflower, broccoli rabe, etc. And stems, celery, asparagus, kohlrabi, bok choy, etc. Clumps of leaves, cabbage, Chinese cabbage, Brussels sprouts, Napa cabbage, radicchio. Root vegetables, we have onions, garlic, leeks, scallions, carrots raw, beets raw, radishes of all kinds, rutabaga, parsnips, turnips, jicama, celeriac, etc. And for mushrooms, we have all kinds that are non-poisonous. Fruit vegetables, we have green papaya, green banana, green breadfruit, green mango, etc. We have yellow squash, patty pan squash, crookneck squash, winter squash, etc. Okra, zucchini, cucumber, pumpkins, eggplant, peppers, tomatoes, etc. A diet rich in fiber. To get plenty of fiber in your diet, eat 1. Whole grains coarsely ground, such as coarsely ground corn from Dr. Kellogg's when he first made cornflakes, not the finely ground corn used in cornflakes today. Whole wheat bread from flour coarsely ground, not whole wheat bread from flour finely ground. Bulgur wheat, example, cut up kernels of wheat. Now, there's an important note. A precaution about wheat is necessary. Around 1980, wheat was genetically modified by mutating sprouting wheat kernels by a deadly poison. Although mutation is not classified as genetic modification, this mutation changed the genes in the wheat. Wheat now grew only 18 inches tall instead of 4 to 5 feet tall. Many other mutations occurred at the same time that it was dwarfed. New proteins were formed that act like poison in people with a compromised immune system. Please therefore use only ancient wheat varieties like Einkorn, Emmer, and so forth. Most have not been bred to the short wheat, although some have, like spelt. 99% of the wheat growing commercially worldwide is this mutated wheat, even the organically grown wheat. Fourth, vegetables without peelings. Without peeling them, as the skins contain plenty of fiber. And 5, we have beans. Beans are an excellent source of fiber. No one peels the skin off the beans. Yet, finely grinding some beans to make flour has become a common practice. The same problem occurs, however, as when finely grinding grains to flour. Little fiber is left. For greens, an excellent fiber is greens because of all the extra phytonutrients they have along with the complex starch and the chloroplast. The chloroplast is what makes greens green. The cabbage family greens are the best. They demand more minerals to grow. Edible roots, leaves, seeds, and fruits. A number of edible roots, leaves, seeds, and fruits supply fiber in the form of complex starches and complex sugars. Learn how to get the most fiber out of them. For example, broccoli leaves have almost 3 times more fiber than broccoli heads. And for complex sugars, like I have described already, we need to recognize complex sugars by their gels, gums, mucilages, slimes, etc., and purposely add them to our diet to improve and sustain immune cells. There are resources on fiber foods. Seventh-day Adventists have written books to teach people what fiber foods are, such as the Full Plate Diet. It lists the common supermarket fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts, seeds, and grains. Eating them in their simplest form gives you the most fiber. Yet there are many more foods less commonly eaten that provide fiber. For example, persimmon fruit is almost all fiber. Diabetics can eat all they want because most of the sugar in it is too complex to digest in the small intestine to glucose. It is mostly compost fuel for the large intestine microbes, which make from it the light oil fuel to feed our immune cells. Dr. Joel Furman has a diet to rebuild the immune system. This diet emphasizes fiber foods. He uses the acronym G-BOMBS as an easy way to remember what he defines as the 6th healthiest food on the planet that you should be eating to prevent disease and thrive. Each letter stands for G for greens, B for beans, O for onion and garlic family, M for mushrooms, B for berries, and S for seeds. They have fiber and necessary nutrients for our health. Refer to his YouTube talks, which will explain how fiber works to reverse heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity, dementia, etc. The writer hopes this simple explanation of what fiber is will help you to choose more of it for your diet. God's diet of fruits, nuts, and grains and vegetables in the simplest form is the right diet for mankind. Genesis 1:29 and 3:18. They provide all the fiber we need. Here's a little saying: God cannot operate unless we cooperate. If you want to download a copy of this talk, email room501prs@yahoo.com. That's ROOM, 501prs@yahoo.com for a copy. It is in PDF form.